9 months pregnant, I took my kids to my parents for a cozy Thanksgiving. One step inside, and I knew we were unwanted by my sister's Friendsgiving. I've always loved Thanksgiving. I'm Jessica, 34 years old, and growing up, it was my favorite holiday time when my family would gather at my parents' house in upstate New York, filling the air with the smell of roasted turkey, pumpkin pie, and laughter. My mom would spend hours in the kitchen, my dad would tell his terrible dad jokes, and my siblings and I would play board games until midnight. Even after I moved out, got married, and had kids of my own, I always looked forward to coming back for Thanksgiving. It was a tradition I cherished, one I wanted my own children to experience. But this year, everything changed. I'm 9 months pregnant with my third child, due any day now, and it's been a challenging pregnancy. My husband, Mark, passed away 2 years ago in a car accident, leaving me to raise our 2 kids, Emma, 7, and Lucas, 5, my own. It hasn't been easy, but I've done my best to keep things together, working as a freelance writer while juggling motherhood. This Thanksgiving, I was especially looking forward to going to my parents' house. I needed the support, the warmth, the sense of family. My kids were excited too, talking nonstop about Grandma's pie and Grandpa's stories. I thought it would be a chance to recharge, to feel loved and cared for during a time when I felt so vulnerable. I called my mom a few weeks ago to confirm we'd be coming. She sounded a bit distracted on the phone, but she assured me they'd be happy to have us. "Of course, Jessica," she said, her voice warm but hurried. "It'll be great to see the kids. We'll make it a special Thanksgiving." I took her at her word, packing up the car with the kids' favorite toys, some snacks for the drive, and a few maternity outfits that still fit. The drive from our apartment in Albany to my parents' house was about 2 hours, and I spent the whole time singing along to Emma and Lucas's favorite songs, trying to ignore the Braxton Hicks contractions that had been coming and going all week. When we pulled into the driveway, I felt a wave of nostalgia. The house looked the same as it always had, red brick with white trim, a wreath on the door, and a faint glow of lights from the living room. I helped Emma and Lucas out of the car, their little hands clutching their stuffed animals as they bounced with excitement. "Grandma's going to be so happy to see us," Emma said, her eyes bright. I smiled, rubbing my belly as I felt the baby kick. "I bet she is," I said, though I couldn't shake a strange feeling in my gut. I knocked on the door, expecting my mom to greet us with her usual bear hug, but when the door opened, it was my sister, Rachel, who stood there. Rachel is 30, single, and has always been the golden child in our family. Successful, charming, and always the center of attention. She's a lawyer in Manhattan, and while we've never been particularly close, I thought we were on good terms. But the look on her face when she saw me was anything but welcoming. Her smile was tight, her eyes cold as they flicked from me to the kids and back again. "Oh, Jessica," she said, her tone flat. "You're here." I blinked, caught off guard by her reaction. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile as I adjusted Lucas on my hip. "We're here for Thanksgiving. Mom said it was okay." Rachel's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Right," she said, stepping aside to let us in. "Well, come in, I guess." I walked inside, the kids trailing behind me, and the moment I stepped into the living room, I knew something was wrong. The house didn't feel like the warm, festive place I remembered. There was no smell of turkey or pie, no decorations, no music playing softly in the background. Instead, the room was filled with people I didn't recognize. Rachel's friends, I assumed, all dressed in sleek, expensive clothes, sipping wine and laughing over some inside joke. My parents were there too, but they barely looked up when I walked in. My mom was sitting on the couch, her attention fixed on one of Rachel's friends, while my dad was in the corner, scrolling on his phone. "Mom? Dad?" I said, my voice hesitant as I set Lucas down. Emma clung to my leg, her excitement fading as she sensed the tension in the room. "We're here." My mom finally looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Oh, Jessica," she said, standing up but not moving to hug me. "I didn't realize you were coming today." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I called you a few weeks ago. You said it was fine. We always come for Thanksgiving." My dad looked up from his phone, his brow furrowing. "That was before Rachel decided to host her friends," he said, his tone matter of fact. "She wanted to have a more adult gathering this year. We didn't think you'd still want to come, with the kids and everything." I stared at them, my heart sinking as I processed their words. An adult gathering? I was 9 months pregnant, a widow, with 2 young kids, and they thought I wouldn't want to come for Thanksgiving? I looked around the room, taking in the scene, Rachel's friends laughing, the lack of any kid-friendly food or activities, the way my parents seemed more interested in impressing Rachel's guests than welcoming us. It was clear we weren't wanted here. Rachel stepped forward, her arms crossed as she looked at me with a fake smile. "I mean, you can stay if you want," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But we're not really set up for kids. And you look like you're about to pop, Jessica. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at home." I felt a surge of anger, my hands trembling as I held Emma's hand tighter. "You knew I was coming," I said, my voice low but shaking. "You knew I needed this, Rachel. Why didn't you tell me you were turning Thanksgiving into your personal party?" Rachel shrugged, her expression unapologetic. "I didn't think it was a big deal," she said. "You're always so dramatic, Jessica. It's just one holiday. You'll survive." I looked at my parents, hoping they'd say something, anything, to defend me, but they just sat there, avoiding my gaze. My mom finally spoke, her voice soft but dismissive. "Rachel's right, honey," she said. "Maybe it's better if you come back another time. We'll do something for the kids later." I felt tears prick at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to give Rachel the satisfaction of seeing me break. I turned to Emma and Lucas, who were looking up at me with wide, confused eyes, and forced a smile. "Come on, guys," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "Let's go." As I led my kids back to the car, I heard Rachel's laughter behind me, her friends joining in as if my pain was some kind of joke. I buckled Emma and Lucas into their seats, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and humiliation. I'd come here hoping for a warm Thanksgiving, a chance to feel supported during one of the hardest times of my life. Instead, I'd been made to feel like an intruder in my own family. But as I drove away, a new resolve settled in my chest. Rachel and my parents thought they could push me out, that I'd just take this and move on, but they were wrong. I wasn't going to let this go. They'd see soon enough that I wasn't as weak as they thought. The drive away from my parents' house felt like an eternity, even though it was only a few minutes before I pulled over to the side of the road to catch my breath. My hands were still shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall in front of Emma and Lucas. I could hear their small voices from the back seat, filled with confusion and disappointment. "Mommy, why didn't Grandma want us to stay?" Emma asked, her tone soft but laced with hurt. Lucas chimed in, his voice wobbly. "I wanted pie. Why was Aunt Rachel so mean?" I turned to look at them, forcing a smile despite the ache in my chest. "I'm so sorry, guys," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "Grandma and Grandpa, they just had a different plan this year. But we're going to have our own Thanksgiving, okay? It'll be even better." Emma nodded, though I could tell she wasn't convinced. And Lucas clutched his stuffed dinosaur tighter, his little face scrunched up in thought. I took a deep breath, trying to push down the anger and humiliation that threatened to overwhelm me. I'd come to my parents' house hoping for support, for a sense of family during one of the hardest times of my life. I was 9 months pregnant, a widow, raising 2 kids on my own, and they couldn't even make room for us at Thanksgiving. Rachel's coldness, my parents' indifference, it felt like a betrayal I couldn't wrap my head around. I knew I couldn't go home yet. The thought of driving back to our empty apartment in Albany, with no Thanksgiving dinner, no decorations, no warmth, was too much to bear. I needed to do something for my kids, to salvage this day for them. I pulled out my phone, my hands still shaky, and started searching for nearby places where we could go. That's when I remembered a diner about 20 minutes away, a little place called Rosie's that Mark and I used to stop at on our way to my parents' house. It was a cozy spot, the kind of place that always had holiday decorations up early, with waitresses who called you honey and a jukebox in the corner. It wasn't the Thanksgiving I'd envisioned, but it was something. I drove to Rosie's, the kids quiet in the back seat, as I tried to hold myself together. When we walked in, The diner was exactly as I remembered it. Strings of fairy lights hung along the walls, a small plastic turkey centerpiece on each table, and the smell of coffee and pie in the air. The waitress, a kind older woman with a name tag that read Doris, greeted us with a warm smile. "Well, hello there," she said, her eyes softening as she took in my pregnant belly and the kids clinging to my hands. "You folks here for some Thanksgiving dinner?" I nodded, my throat tight as I tried to keep my emotions in check. "Yes, please," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just the three of us." Doris led us to a booth near the window, handing Emma and Lucas some crayons and paper menus to color on. "We've got a special Thanksgiving plate today," she said, her tone gentle. "Turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, the works, and pie for dessert. How's that sound?" "That sounds perfect," I said, managing a small smile as the kids perked up at the mention of pie. Doris left to put in our order, and I sat there, watching Emma and Lucas color, their little faces focused as they drew turkeys and pumpkins. For a moment, I felt a flicker of relief. At least I could give them this a warm meal, a little bit of holiday cheer. But the hurt from what had happened at my parents' house still gnawed at me, a sharp pain I couldn't ignore. As we waited for our food, I pulled out my phone, unable to resist checking if my parents or Rachel had reached out. There was nothing. No texts, no calls, no apologies. But there was something else. A new post on Rachel's Instagram story. I opened it, my heart sinking as I saw a photo of her and her friends at my parents' house, all smiling and holding wine glasses, with the caption, "Best Thanksgiving yet!" Friendsgiving. My mom had commented, "So proud of you, Rachel," and my dad had liked the post. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and betrayal. They didn't care. They didn't even care enough to check if we were okay. I set my phone down, my hands trembling as I tried to focus on the kids, but the image of Rachel's smug smile, my parents' indifference, kept replaying in my mind. I thought back to the way Rachel had looked at me, the way she dismissed me like I was an inconvenience, the way my parents had let her take over a holiday that had always been about family. I'd always known Rachel was self-centered. She'd been the golden child growing up, always getting what she wanted while I was the responsible one who picked up the pieces. But this was a new low, even for her. And my parents enabling her, choosing her Friendsgiving over their own daughter and grandchildren, felt like a knife in the back. Doris brought our food, setting down plates of steaming turkey and mashed potatoes, and the kids dug in, their earlier disappointment replaced with excitement. I tried to eat, but every bite tasted like ash, my mind racing with what to do next. I couldn't let this go. Rachel and my parents thought they could push me out, that I'd just accept their rejection and move on. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I was 9 months pregnant, yes, but I wasn't weak. I was a mother, a fighter, and I was going to make sure they understood the pain they'd caused. As we finished our meal, Doris came over with a slice of pumpkin pie for each of us, her smile warm. "On the house," she said, winking at the kids. "You three deserve a little extra sweetness today." I thanked her, my heart swelling with gratitude for her kindness. It was a small gesture, but it reminded me that there were people out there who cared, even if my own family didn't. That night, as I drove back to Albany with Emma and Lucas asleep in the back seat, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Rachel and my parents ruin this holiday for use or any holiday ever again. I was going to show them that we didn't need them, that we could create our own traditions, our own family, and I was going to make sure they faced the consequences of their actions. They thought they could exclude us and move on like nothing happened, but they were wrong. I had a plan, and when I was done, they'd see just how strong I could be. If my family's rejection makes your heart ache, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, would you forgive them for this? I need to hear your thoughts. The drive back to Albany that night was quiet, with Emma and Lucas fast asleep in the back seat, their little faces peaceful despite the chaos of the day. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands steady on the wheel. But inside, I was a storm of emotions, hurt, and a fierce determination to make things right. Rachel's Instagram post, my parents' indifference, the way they'd made me and my kids feel like we didn't belong in our own family, it all played on a loop in my mind. I'd spent years being the good daughter, the one who never made a fuss, who always put family first, even after Mark's death when I needed them most. But they'd shown me exactly how little that meant to them. I wasn't going to let this go, not this time. When we got home, I tucked the kids into bed, kissing their foreheads as they stirred slightly. Emma mumbled something about pie in her sleep, and I smiled, my heart aching with love for them. They deserved better than what my family had given us today, and I was going to make sure they got it. I sat on the couch, my laptop on my lap, and started to think about how to turn this around. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what happened next. And the first step was making sure Rachel and my parents understood the gravity of what they'd done. I started by looking through Rachel's social media more closely. Her Instagram was a goldmine of evidence post after post of her Friendsgiving, with captions that made my blood boil. One photo showed her and her friends laughing in my parents' living room with the caption, "No kids, no drama, just the way I like it. Thanksgiving goals." Another was a selfie with my mom, captioned, "Couldn't have done it without my biggest fan. Love you, Mom." Toh. The comments were full of praise from her friends, but there was one that caught my eye, a message from a mutual acquaintance, Sarah, who wrote, "Wait, where's Jessica?" "I thought she was coming with the kids," Rachel had replied. "Oh, she showed up, but it wasn't really her vibe. She left." "Hope hard." I stared at the comment, my jaw tightening as I read Rachel's dismissive response. She'd made it sound like I'd chosen to leave, like I was the one who didn't fit in, when in reality, she'd made it clear we weren't welcome. I screenshot everything, the posts, the captions, the comments, knowing I'd need them later, but social media evidence wasn't enough. I needed to hit Rachel and my parents where it hurt, to make them feel the same rejection they'd inflicted on me and my kids. I thought about my next move, my mind racing with possibilities. I remembered something Rachel had mentioned a few months ago. She was up for a big promotion at her law firm, a partner position she'd been working toward for years. She'd bragged about how she was a shoo-in, how her boss loved her, how she'd be the youngest partner in the firm's history. But I also knew Rachel wasn't as perfect as she pretended to be. A few years back, she'd gotten into trouble at work for taking credit for a case that wasn't hers, and I'd overheard her talking to my mom about it, begging her not to tell anyone. At the time, I'd kept quiet, not wanting to cause drama. But now, I wasn't so sure I wanted to keep her secrets anymore. I did some digging online, searching for the case Rachel had mentioned. It didn't take long to find it, a high-profile lawsuit from 3 years ago that had made headlines in the legal community. Rachel's name was all over the articles, but so was the name of another lawyer, a junior associate named Clara Bennett, who'd claimed Rachel had stolen her work. The firm had hushed it up, and Rachel had kept her job. But the story was still out there, buried in old blog posts and legal forums. I saved the links, my heart pounding as I realized I had something I could use against her. But I didn't want to stop there. I needed to make this public, to show Rachel and my parents that their actions had consequences. I decided to host my own Thanksgiving celebration, a real one, with people who actually cared about me and my kids. I reached out to a few friends in Albany, including my neighbor Mia, who'd always been there for me since Mark's death. Mia was a single mom too, with a daughter Emma's age, and she was horrified when I told her what had happened. "They did what?" she said, her voice rising over the phone. "Jessica, that's awful. You and the kids are coming to my place for Thanksgiving. I'm not taking no for an answer." I hesitated, not wanting to impose, but Mia insisted. "It'll be small, but it'll be warm," she said. "We'll cook together, the kids can play, and we'll make it a day to remember. And if you want to invite more people, go for it. Let's show your family what a real Thanksgiving looks like." I felt a surge of gratitude, tears pricking at my eyes as I agreed. Over the next few days, I planned our own Thanksgiving celebration, inviting a few other friends who'd been there for me over the years, a coworker, Sarah, who'd commented on Rachel's post, and a couple of moms from Lucas's preschool. I also reached out to a local community center where I'd volunteered in the past, asking if they knew any families who might need a place to go for the holiday. They connected me with a young couple, Elena and Carlos, who'd recently moved to Albany and didn't have family nearby. I invited them too, determined to create a gathering filled with the warmth and love my kids deserved. As I planned, I kept an eye on Rachel's social media, noticing that she'd posted a few more photos from her Friendsgiving, each one more self-congratulatory than the last. But I also noticed something else. Me mom had texted me, a short message that read, "Jessica, I'm sorry if you felt left out. Let's talk soon. It was the bare minimum, and it only made me angrier. She wasn't sorry for what they'd done, as she was sorry I'd felt a certain way, as if it was my fault for being hurt. I didn't respond. I'd talk to her, but it would be on my terms, not hers. By the time Thanksgiving Day arrived or rescheduled celebration, a week after the actual holiday, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I'd spent the morning cooking with Mia, the kids helping us mash potatoes and set the table, their laughter filling the house. Elena and Carlos arrived with a homemade flan, and Sarah brought a bottle of sparkling cider for the kids. The community center family showed up too, their gratitude humbling as we all sat down to eat. It wasn't the Thanksgiving I'd planned, but it was better because it was real. As we ate, I took a photo of the group, everyone smiling around the table, and posted it on my own Instagram with the caption, "Real family isn't always blood." Thankful for the people who show up when it matters most. True Thanksgiving. I knew Rachel and my parents would see it, and I wanted them to. They thought they could exclude us and move on, but I was going to show them what they'd missed and what they'd lost. The Thanksgiving celebration at Mia's house was everything I'd hoped it would be. The table was crowded with mismatched dishes, the kids were laughing as they played with Elena and Carlos's son, and the air was filled with the kind of warmth I'd been craving when I'd first driven to my parents' house. Mia raised a glass of sparkling cider, her smile wide as she looked around the room. "To new traditions," she said, her voice full of joy. "And to family however we find it." Everyone cheered, and I felt a lump in my throat as I clinked glasses with Sarah, who gave me a knowing nod. This was what Thanksgiving was supposed to feel like. But even as I smiled and laughed with my new family, I knew I wasn't done with Rachel and my parents. They needed to face the consequences of what they'd done. My Instagram post from the celebration got more attention than I'd expected. Friends and acquaintances liked and commented, praising the gathering and asking how I was doing. But the reaction I was waiting for came later that night, when I saw Rachel had viewed my story. She didn't comment, but I knew she'd seen it, the photo of our happy, kid-filled Thanksgiving, the caption calling out, "Real family." I also got a text from my mom, her tone more urgent this time. "Jessica, I saw your post. We need to talk. Please call me." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready to talk on their terms. I wanted them to come to me. The next day, I decided it was time to take things a step further. I'd been sitting on the information about Rachel's past work scandal for a reason, and now I knew how to use it. I didn't want to just expose her. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation she'd inflicted on me, to understand what it was like to be publicly shamed. I created an anonymous email account and drafted a message to Rachel's boss at the law firm, attaching the links to the old articles about the stolen case and Clara Bennett's accusations. I also included a screenshot of Rachel's Friendsgiving post, the one where she'd bragged about a drama-free Thanksgiving, and wrote, "Is this the kind of person you want as a partner in your firm? Someone who steals credit and excludes her own family for the sake of appearances?" I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the send button, but then I thought of Emma's disappointed face, Lucas's quiet confusion, and the way Rachel had laughed as we left. I hit send. I knew the email might not lead to anything. Rachel was good at talking her way out of trouble, but I also knew it would rattle her, and that was enough for now. I wanted her to feel the pressure, to know that her actions had consequences, but I wasn't done yet. I needed to confront my parents, to make them see the pain they'd caused, not just to me, but to their grandchildren. I decided to host a small family meeting at my apartment, inviting my parents and Rachel. I texted them, keeping my tone neutral. "I'd like to talk about what happened on Thanksgiving. Can you come to my place tomorrow at 6 p.m.? The kids will be there." My mom replied quickly, saying they'd be there, but Rachel didn't respond. I wasn't surprised. She'd probably seen my Instagram post and knew I wasn't going to let this go quietly. The next evening, I prepared for the meeting, setting out a few snacks for the kids and making sure the apartment was tidy. Emma and Lucas were playing in their room when my parents arrived, their expressions a mix of guilt and defensiveness. My mom hugged me, but it felt forced, and my dad gave me a stiff nod as he sat on the couch. Rachel showed up a few minutes later, her arms crossed, her face a mask of irritation. "Let's get this over with," she said, not even looking at me as she took a seat. I stood in front of them, my hands resting on my belly as I felt the baby kick, a reminder of why I was doing this. I invited you here because I need you to understand what you did on Thanksgiving, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. I came to your house hoping for support, for family, for a place where my kids could feel loved. I'm 9 months pregnant. I've been raising my kids alone since Mark died, and I needed you. But instead, you made us feel like we didn't belong. My mom's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. My dad shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on the floor. Rachel rolled her eyes, her tone sharp as she cut in. Jessica, you're blowing this out of proportion, she said. It was one holiday. I wanted to do something with my friends. You could have stayed if you wanted to. No, I couldn't, I snapped, my voice rising as I met her gaze. You made it clear we weren't welcome. You turned a family holiday into your personal party, and Mom and Dad let you. You didn't even care how it would affect Emma and Lucas. They were so excited to see you and you broke their hearts. I pulled out my phone, opening the screenshots of Rachel's Instagram posts. And then you posted this, I said, holding up the screen so they could see the no kids, no drama caption. You bragged about excluding us, Rachel. You made it a joke. And Mom, you commented on it, saying you were proud of her. Do you have any idea how that felt? My mom's face crumpled, and she started to cry, her hands covering her mouth. Jessica, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't realize. I thought you'd be okay. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice softer now but still firm. You both did. And you, Rachel, you've always put yourself first, but this was a new low. I'm done letting you walk all over me. Rachel's face turned red, her hands clenching into fists. You're such a martyr, Jessica, she spat. Always playing the victim. Maybe if you weren't so needy, we wouldn't have to tiptoe around you. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the email I'd sent to her boss. I didn't show it to her, but I let her know I had it. I know about the case you stole from Clara Bennett, I said, my voice low. And I made sure your boss knows too. You're not as untouchable as you think, Rachel. Her eyes widened, a flash of panic crossing her face. You wouldn't, she whispered, her voice trembling. Jessica, that's my career. You can't do that. I already did, I said, my tone cold. You humiliated me and my kids in front of your friends. Now you get to feel what it's like. The room went silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My dad finally spoke, his voice gruff. Jessica, that's enough, he said. We get it, we messed up, but this is too far. No, Dad, I said, turning to him. What you did was too far. You chose Rachel's ego over your own daughter and grandchildren. I'm done pretending that's okay. I've created my own family now, with people who actually care about us. You're welcome to be part of our lives, but only if you start acting like family should. I looked at my kids, who'd come into the room, their eyes wide as they watched us. I softened, kneeling down to hug them. Let's go play, okay? I said, leading them back to their room. I turned to my parents and Rachel one last time. You can let yourselves out. As they left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I'd said what I needed to say, and I'd made sure they understood the consequences of their actions. I didn't know if they'd change, but I knew I had. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me or my kids feel unwanted again. What would you do if your family turned their back on you during the holidays? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Update. 1 month later. It's been a month since the confrontation, and a lot has changed. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Lily. Just a few days after the meeting, she's perfect, and Emma and Lucas adore her. Rachel's boss called her in for a meeting after my email, and while she didn't lose her job, she was passed over for the partner position. She texted me, furious, but I didn't respond. My parents have been reaching out, apologizing and asking to see the kids, but I'm taking it slow. I've been spending more time with Mia and my new friends, building traditions that make us feel loved. I'm focusing on my little family, and I've never felt stronger. Update. 3 months later. 3 months later, and things are looking up. My parents have started making an effort. They invited us over for a small family dinner, just us, and apologized sincerely for what happened. They've promised to set boundaries with Rachel, and I'm cautiously optimistic. Rachel, on the other hand, has kept her distance. Though I heard through Sarah that she's been struggling at work since the partner snub. I don't feel bad she brought it on herself. I've been taking the kids to the community center to volunteer, and we're planning a big Christmas celebration with our new friends. I'm learning to let go of the past and focus on the future. And it feels so good. Update. 6 months later. It's been 6 months, and I'm in a really good place. My parents have kept their word. They've been more involved, even babysitting so I can have some time to myself. Rachel finally reached out with a real apology, admitting she was jealous of the attention I got as a mom and felt overshadowed. We're not close, but we're civil, and that's enough for now. I've started a blog about my experiences as a single mom, and it's taken off. I'm even working on a book. The kids are thriving, and we're hosting our own Thanksgiving this year with Mia, Elena, Carlos, and all our new friends. I've built a family that truly loves us, and that's all I need. If you enjoyed this story of strength and justice, subscribe and hit the bell for more Reddit dramas. What would you do if your family turned their back on you? Let me know in the comments.